Stunning red poppies in the fields near the town of Ypres in the Flanders region of western Belgium, an area synonymous with some of the most dreadful battles of the First World War, that has left a poignant legacy in the hundreds of cemeteries that dot the landscape around the town. Anyone visiting the area really should take time out to have a moment of quiet reflection, and then perhaps the concept of European Union will not seem such a bad idea after all. The conflict that takes place here in late June each year, however, is altogether more civilised. The Ypres Rally is one of the leading European Championship rounds in the calendar, and as such attracts thousands of spectators into the region. It was no surprise to find 3 Works Corolla World Rally cars for Ypres, a Guinea and the Dane Lundgaard. Britain was represented in the top 10 by the new Works Nissan Almera kit car in the hands of Mark Higgins. With the huge crowd in the town square cheering their local heroes every move, we managed to grab a quick word with Loix.
Ja, ik denk dat het een heel mooi gevecht gaat zijn voor de overwinning, zo'n beetje gelijk verleden jaar.
Fast Freddy, as he's known locally, says he's looking forward to a good rally and hopes he can make it 3 victories in a row here in Ypres. He knows he faces strong opposition from his teammates and, of course, the man right behind him, Grégoire de Mavius.
En een fout of een mechanische pech is vlug gebeurd, zo dus eerste rij en dan zullen we het resultaat zien.
Wereldkampioen geworden met Colin McQueen, want deze jaar ook met een stel van Colin McQueen in de bal gaat ook
outsider, oui, disons qu'on aimerait.
De Mavius acknowledges he's the outsider this weekend, but reckons that given the breaks, he'll still give Loix a run for his money.
Je crois qu'il l'a prouvé en championnat du monde. Donc, mais on va se battre pour essayer de poursuivre son rythme.
Andrea Guini is running one of the Grifoni Corolla World Rally cars and is under no illusions that the Belgians will be difficult to beat on home ground. However, he says the weather's good, the event is a good event, but a little bit different from the Italian and World Championship rallies he's competed on, but he still hopes to be fast here. After Flemish, French and Italian, a Dane speaking perfect English.
I'm looking very forward to do the rally again. We've had a very good recce this time, and it's the 3rd time we are here now and did a good result last year, so we're quite happy.
As the crowds continue to stream into the square, we catch up with Mark Higgins. Mark, a successful test in Spain a couple of weeks ago must have given you a lot of confidence for this weekend.
Yeah, it has. 2 very different events really, or very different types of places, so we've still got quite a lot to learn here. You know, it's very different, the surface you have, the type of roads you're on, the tight corners. So we're going to be doing quite a bit of work over the rally, and that's the purpose of why we're here to test. And if we can make the car very competitive by the end of the rally, we'll be more than happy.
And of course the weather here in Belgium can be unpredictable. It can be raining one minute and sunny the next. That must make tyre choice difficult.
Well, looking up there for tyre choice at the moment even is very difficult. The forecast isn't good, unfortunately, and when the weather does come down here, it's very, very treacherous, so you've got to be very careful.
Very careful indeed. Most stages are narrow with little margin for error, and any mistake can be costly. On the opening test, a 9-kilometre stage to get everyone warmed up, Loix sets the fastest time, which, much to his surprise, teammate Aghini equals, with the 3rd Corolla only 9/10 of a second further back. The battle was on. De Mavius took 4th fastest in the ProDrive Run Subaru Impreza World Rally car, but upped his pace for the next stage, taking fastest time. Past winner Patrick Snyers dropped 5 seconds to the leaders on this stage in his RED prepared Escort World Rally car, as he complained of poor handling. F2 is very, very popular in the Belgian Championship, and this well-sorted Peugeot 306 Maxi is proving to be the one to beat. In the hands of the local driver Van der Vaar, it takes top 10 stage times on the first 2 tests. Behind him in F2, the Seat Ibiza of yet another legend of Belgian rallying, Mark Duez, who dropped 7 seconds to the Peugeot on the opening stage. Princeton in the Maxi Megane is no slouch, and he was only 2/10 of a second behind the Seat. Admitting to having a slow start, he reckoned he'd be pushing the Peugeot hard once he got into his stride. And flying the flag for Britain, Mark Higgins and Phil Mills in the Nissan Almera kit car. This was the first time the car had been seen in anger, and a brief tarmac test in Spain earlier in the month, its only previous run out.
Turn left 1 plus, loose. Then left 5 plus. And right 6. Then max right of a crest, and max left, 40, left 5 in, then right 5 cut OK. 60, max crest, 60, turn left 2. Then turn right 2, cut around pole, loose. 250 over crests.
The rally was being used very much as a test and development exercise, with some useful lessons being learnt. Another new car on the event, the Skoda Octavia kit car, this rather lurid slide warming the tyres up. In the service area after 2 stages, Yokohama's Jim Fulwood plugs in the tyre warmers on a new set of tarmac rubber ready for Mark Higgins, as we grab a quick word with Freddie Loix. Freddie, the first couple of stages out of the way, how was it?
Not so bad. We started not too quick, and I think we did a quite good time on the first stage. The second stage was also not so bad. Of course, Greg was a little bit quicker. I don't know exactly the time of the other drivers, but I had a good feeling, and I tried to go. Still like to go like that.
The main concern in the service camp seems to be the changeable weather, all these dark clouds overhead.
Yeah, it's a little bit normal for Belgium. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but the only thing we can do is wait and see what's happened.
An unruffled Freddie Loix there as Mark Higgins brings the Almera in for its first service. A routine tyre change is the order of the day, as Mark discusses how the car's handling with the IBAC suspension engineer. No apparent dramas though at this early stage. The main aim is to get some competition mileage on the car, experiment with suspension and tyre choice, and then on the final day have a go at the other F2 opposition.
A lot of the testing we did in Spain seems to have sort of pulled off really, but they just seem to be struggling a lot with understeer coming out of the corners. And we don't know if that's down to something with the suspension or a tyre problem, but we'll maybe try some different things for the next couple and see if we can resolve it. It's all about, it's getting the confidence. If we can get that sorted, we can be a lot more confident for the braking as well.
Freddie Loix heads off to stage 3, a short blast around the service roads in a nearby industrial estate on the outskirts of town. But it's teammate Aghini who sets the pace at 1 minute 51.7 seconds for the 3-kilometre test, thrilling the crowd with some aggressive driving. The stage provided a perfect example of taking the rally to the people, with thousands lining the route. Not only that, it was also televised live on Belgian television. Demavius was second fastest, exactly 1 second slower than Aghini, and a mere 1/10 of a second quicker than Freddie Loix. We go on board now with Mark Higgins and Phil Mills to sample firsthand the new Nissan Almera.
140, right 3, to left 3, and open right 1, in. For open left 1. Then left 2 plus, and right 4 stone, into left 2, left 2, into right and left 5, into right 4 plus, stone, then opens 200. Left 6 okay, 350. Left entry, chicane. Chicane left entry repeated. Then max crest, then turn right 2 before white. 18, damp. Left 2, out, slippy. Then turn left 2. 90. turn left 3 plus, turn left 3 plus, repeated, and right 4, and left 5 into turn right 3, and left 5, 100 of a crest, turn left 2 plus, and right 4, fast, 450 to end, turn right 1 plus, around roundabout, turn right 1 plus, around roundabout.
Their time was 1 minute 58.2 seconds to give them 13th overall and 3rd fastest F2. Back out in the countryside, the crowds were out in their thousands, held back behind more red tape than anyone had ever seen. After a spate of accidents recently in Belgium, organisers are very sensitive about spectator safety and rigorously enforce the no-go zones, channeling spectators into specific areas. De Mavius opened his account on the evening stages with another fastest time, really putting the hammer down to take 3 seconds off second fastest man, Lundgaard, and lead the rally at this point by a scant 7/10 of a second from Freddie Loix. Ypres is known as a specialised rally where local knowledge counts for perhaps more than any other major European event. Hence, very few top drivers bother coming to Ypres, preferring to let the Belgians fight it out amongst themselves. But here we had an Italian and a Dane giving the 2 top Belgian drivers, Loix and De Mavius, a good run for their money. The leading privateer, although privateer is a bit of a misnomer these days, was Verrate in the Winfield-sponsored Subaru Impreza World Rally car, who was snapping at the heels of the top boys with his own brand of aggressive driving. Sniers was popping and banging his way around the lanes to good effect and making up time, pleasing his hordes of fans who cheered his every move. F2 was being led quite convincingly even at this early stage by the Peugeot, showing what 2 years development can do. This is the same car that currently frightens the leading teams on some of the tarmac World Championship rallies. Mark Higgins, however, found this stage far from his liking, dropping 16 seconds to the quickest F2 car as he found the back end skipping about too much for his liking. Leading Group N was the Mitsubishi Charisma of Hans Stacey from the Netherlands, beating a horde of similar local cars. After 4 stages, crews returned to Ypres for a brief service halt. This concept of coming back to a central point after a few stages is a popular one in Belgium and does much to bring the sport to the people and make rallying popular among a much broader audience than perhaps we enjoy here in Britain. Back out in the countryside, the light was beginning to fail as crews tackled 2 stages before the overnight halt. Spectators were still out in force and making no secret of their allegiance. Loix didn't disappoint them. He beat De Mavius by a full 9 seconds on stage 5 and 11 on stage 6, much down to some inspired driving, but also due to De Mavius wearing his tyres down to the canvas on 5 and puncturing on 6. He would finish the day way down in 8th place. Aghini was hanging on in there and admitted he was getting near the ragged edge at times in his bid to stay with Loix. He had the hard-charging Verrate in the Impreza snapping at his heels. The little Peugeot continued to fly despite a wrong tyre choice on this particular stage. Most crews, even the leaders, admitted to getting caught out with a wrong tyre choice on day 1. For some of the F2 runners, this was compounded by incorrect suspension settings, which did little to inspire confidence, and at times caught out even the most experienced. The Peugeot would finish day one 7th overall and with a healthy lead in F2. We go on board again with Mark Higgins, getting a flavour of the stages and the enthusiasm of the spectators as they stand in front gardens to watch the action only inches from their front doors, the ultimate in taking the action to the people.
And right 5. And right 6 long. Over 180. Tightens to 3, okay. Don't cut.
Sadly, this would be the last we would see of the Almera, as partway through stage 6 the engine let go and that was the end of their rally. Valuable lessons had been learnt, however, in what was, after all, a test and development exercise that had shown the potential of the car. No such problems for Freddie Loix, as he headed back to the overnight halt in Ypres with a nice lead to take into day 2. The results show Loix with a comfortable buffer over the others, and already after only 6 stages the field was beginning to spread out. Day 2 and a civilised lunchtime start, but the weather was very overcast. Did second place Lundgaard think he could make up that 16-second deficit to Loix?
Depends on a lot of things, especially the weather will be a main factor for today. But if we are running without problems, then it's for sure possible.
Loix was in no mood to surrender his lead and rocketed away from the stage start in spectacular fashion. In fact, he kept this pace up right through the stage, sending the sparks flying to increase his lead slightly. He was lucky that on this stage he'd almost reached the finish on slick tyres before the rain started. Some of the opposition weren't so lucky. Lundgaard wasn't sitting back and taking things easy either, and matched Loix over the first few stages of the day to keep the Belgian in sight and pull away from Aghini. Demavius was pushing hard and reeled in the cars immediately ahead as he fought back from his disappointing day 1 8th place. Aghini had been caught out on dry tyres when the rain started to come down partway through the stage. He was lucky to get away with only the odd spin. Belgian ditches can be very unforgiving, and if he dived into one of those, he may very well have stayed there.
Puttana miseria. 30. Testa 3, taglia poco, 50. Testa 3 meno meno, taglia tanto.
Great continued to mix it with the leaders, ready to pounce should one of them slip up in the worsening conditions. Schneiers was complaining of getting caught out on the wrong tyres when the rain came down, and in fact he also punctured on stage 9, dropping 4 minutes changing the wheel. Verhulstrater in an Escort World Rally car was also complaining of poor handling, and was another to puncture on stage 9, dropping down the order. This is the way to do it, no parking the car miles from the stage. Get on your bike and you can ride right up to the action. Spectators the world over are a hardy breed, and in Belgium during Ypres, you had to be. The rain was terrible. As the rain continued to pour down, Lundgaard put in a bit of a spurt on stage 10 to snatch a top time. Loix was having none of it and responded with a string of fastest times to extend his lead to around 40 seconds at this point. Aghini admitted to backing off a little as the weather worsened, and he'd experienced 1 or 2 anxious moments due to the conditions and a poor tyre choice. Parade was concerned about his gearbox and was already making plans to change to a new box at the final service of the day. Bertoni was holding a top 10 position in the Celica GT4, which, once the pride of the works teams, compared to the new World Rally cars, almost looks old-fashioned now. Prinsen had put the Megane into a ditch, damaging the front suspension and losing time to the other F2 runners, but was fighting back hard. The man on the bike decides he's had enough and heads off home as the Group N leader Stacy splashes through in the Mitsubishi. The little Saxo kit car, perhaps to be seen on next year's British Championship, was performing well, although he too had visited one of those ditches we keep mentioning. Duez admitted to having been off the road more times than he cared to think about, after he'd been caught out like so many others on the wrong tyres. Van der Weyer continued to dominate the F2 battle in the flying Peugeot, and still held on to 6th place into the bargain. Service in Ypres town square, and the main talking point was tyre choice in conditions that were changing by the hour. Perhaps if everyone was only allowed one type of dry tyre and one type of wet tyre, it would make things easier, cheaper, put everyone on a level playing field, and probably add some excitement into the bargain. Heresy, I hear the works teams cry. Meanwhile, back out on the stages, and the crowds were still out in force, braving even more rain. Loic seemed to be revelling in the conditions, getting the tyre choice right and having an intimate knowledge of the stages, not doing his cause any harm either. Lundgaard was still not giving up the chase and continued to set the odd fastest time from Loic's. Aghini had almost resigned himself to 3rd place, but was coming under increasing pressure from Verrate, so can't even take that for granted. Patrick Sniers had been pushing hard, trying to make up for the time lost earlier with his puncture. Perhaps in the end he pushed too hard as his engine let go in a cloud of steam, and that was that. It's no good staring at it, Patrick. It won't get better. The final stages of the day, and Emil Trimmer in the Skoda Octavia was finding life very hard and languished down the field, but was still good value for the spectators with his sideways style. Princeton in the Megane continued his chase of the Peugeot and the prize of top F2 runner. He was lucky to get away with nothing more than a spin here. Gavin in the Saxo kit car was acquitting himself well, leading his class by a country mile. Verhulst joined the list of crews that had spun their way around most of day 2 stages. De Mavius continued his spirited fight back, although realistically knew the leaders were too far ahead for him to pose a real threat. Verrate was the dark horse in the Subaru Impreza. He was within sight of Aghini and ready to snap up Lundgaard too if he should hit trouble. The event was heading for a great finale. The leader, though, was Fast Freddy, who had revelled in the conditions. Perhaps also his more intimate knowledge of the Corolla was paying dividends when tyre and suspension choice were so critical.
Ja, we hebben een kleine voorsprong op de tweede en
At the overnight halt in Ypres, Freddy admitted to having had to work hard on the second day. He'd experimented with suspension settings in an effort to get maximum performance, and was conscious that the slightest mistake would let Lundgaard through.
At this stage it's nice to be second, and we have a long gap to Aghini behind us, so I'm really satisfied.
And so the results show that despite Lundgaard's best efforts, Loic's had increased his lead, with Aghini, Verrate and De Mavius trailing behind them. Amazingly, dry, dusty conditions greeted competitors on day 3, as Loic's adopted a conservative approach to make sure victory would be his. The battle really was going on behind him for the runners-up places. Lundgaard's good run was about to come to an end, however, when he put his Corolla into a ditch, ripped a wheel off and his rally was over. Aghini therefore moved into 2nd place and swapped fastest times with Verrate, who reckoned that 2nd spot was just about on if he kept the pressure up on the Italian. And now for some amateur fan cam. Never mind the quality, look at the action, as first Verhulst in the Escort World Rally car attacks the ditch and the culvert with dramatic effect. If the price of Brussels sprouts goes up next week, don't be surprised, as the Escort ploughs across the field to regain the road. It was all in vain, however. Retirement was just around the corner. Next, it was the Group N leader, Stacey's turn to have a go. He gets 10 out of 10 for artistic merit. But surely the spectators deserve some sort of award for turning him over and dropping him straight back in the ditch again. He too retired. A troubled rally came to an end for Mark Higgins, who retired his Seat Ibiza on the same stage with a blown engine. As the rally reached its climax, it came as no surprise that Van der Vaart in the Peugeot took the F2 award as well as 7th overall. Group N fell to Bernard Munster in the Mitsubishi Lancer as his rivals fell by the wayside. Demavius made it back up to 4th overall after his huge time loss on day 1, but was disappointed with his efforts. Verrate, after a very courageous drive that saw 2nd overall within his sight, in the end had to settle for 3rd place, but at least it was a podium finish. Andrea Reghini acquitted himself well on stages that were far from easy for him, mixing it with the Belgians on their home turf and proving to be no slouch when the conditions were right. The 1998 Ypres Rally, however, only ever belonged to one man. Freddie Loix was everyone's pre-event favourite, and he didn't disappoint them. He set consistently faster stage times, pacing himself when conditions demanded it, and letting the others fight one another when he had the comfortable buffer after day 1. Lundgaard was the only one that could stay with him, but when he needed to, he turned the heat up, and he proved that whether in the World Championship arena or defending pride in his native Belgium, he is a force to be reckoned with. And the results show how comprehensive that victory was. Lundgaard's late retirement made the gap between Loix and the chasing pack look even more impressive, of course, but it was still a fine performance on yet another tough Ypres rally.